Let's jump right into this explainer with a truly staggering number. 250,000. That's the age in years of the early human remains and artifacts they discovered in a rock shelter in Ceuta, specifically inside the Banzu cave. I mean, we're talking about the deep ice age here. That is 250,000 years of human history unfolding right at the edge of the Mediterranean.
So the obvious question we have to ask ourselves is why? What exactly makes one tiny peninsula worth fighting over for 250,000 years? Because from ancient hunter-gatherers all the way up to modern empires, this specific little strip of land has arguably been the most fiercely contested crossroads in all of human history.
Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the Fortress at the Crossroads, the epic history of Ceuta. Now, if you aren't familiar, Ceuta is a completely captivating geographical anomaly. It's a small Spanish enclave located right on the northern tip of Africa, just across the Strait of Gibraltar. It's basically served as a revolving door of empires for millennia, and today we're going to use historical sources to trace exactly how it survived, adapted, and absolutely thrived over the centuries.
Here's our roadmap to navigate all this dense history today. We're going to hit 1. The Seven Hills. 2. Rome and the Visigoths. 3. The Islamic conquest. 4. Eras of Islamic rule. 5. The royal walls. And finally, 6. Sieges and modern Spain. Starting off with Section 1. The Seven Hills, a geography of destiny.
You know, long before modern borders even existed, ancient Phoenician and Greek navigators recognized this strategic gateway by a recurring motif, which was the number 7. The Greeks actually called it Hepta Adelphi, and then the Romans translated that to Septem Fratres, which means 7 brothers. That's referring to the 7 distinct hills of the Almina Peninsula. And over time, the word septum evolved phonetically into the Arabic septa, and then eventually into the modern name we use today, Ceuta.
Moving on to Section 2. Rome and the Visigoths. Fish sauce and fortresses.
When the Roman Empire fully annexed the region around 42 AD under Emperor Claudius, they quickly realized it wasn't just a military choke point. It was a total economic gold mine. The Romans built this massive industry here, centered entirely on garum. If you don't know what that is, think of it as a highly lucrative, pretty pungent fermented fish sauce that essentially acted as ancient Roman ketchup. By the early 2nd century, this factory complex literally occupied the entire isthmus. It brought absolutely incredible wealth into the city.
Which brings us to Section 3, the Islamic conquest, a legendary betrayal.
Okay, so after centuries of really chaotic transitions between the Vandals, the Byzantines, and the Visigoths, the fate of the entire Iberian Peninsula was actually sealed right here. And it all comes down to this legendary betrayal. See, in 708, the Umayyads failed to capture Ceuta, but then, just a year later, the Visigoth governor, Count Julian, who had completely fallen out with his king over some lost lands, decided to switch sides. He handed over his ships to the Muslim forces, which allowed them to cross the strait in 711 and go on to conquer Toledo. Think about that. One governor's grudge in Ceuta literally changed world history forever.
Section 4. Eras of Islamic rule. The revolving door of empires.
For the next several centuries, Ceuta basically became the ultimate prize. It passed through this dizzying succession of Islamic dynasties. We're talking everyone from the Umayyads to the Almoravids, the Almohads, and the Marinids. But even amidst all those shifting political sands and constant power grabs, Ceuta remained a real hub of brilliance. I mean, it produced incredible intellectuals like Al-Idrisi, who was born there in 1099. He went on to become a master cartographer and created the Tabula Roggiana for King Roger II of Sicily. That was easily one of the most advanced world maps of the entire Middle Ages.
This whole era really defined the city through intense religious zeal, incredibly sophisticated governance, and just cutthroat international trade. For instance, under the Almohads in 1155, they established a shura, which is a council of notables, and that just goes to show how highly complex local politics had gotten. But tensions definitely ran high. In 1227, 7 Franciscan friars arrived to preach and ended up being martyred on the Beach of Blood. And then by 1234, the harbor was in total chaos, with violent naval clashes erupting between local rulers, privateers, and Genoese merchants. Ceuta was honestly like the Wild West of the Mediterranean.
All right, let's get into Section 5, the royal walls, forging an impregnable defense.
So in 1415, the Portuguese captured the city and quickly realized that holding on to Ceuta was going to require some massive fortification. Looking at the Portuguese editions from the 1540s, you can see they built these major bastions like Coraza Alta and Bandeira.
And they ingeniously dug out a navigable seawater moat, completely protected by a functional drawbridge. Then, after Ceuta passed permanently to Spain, you see the Spanish additions post-1669. They rapidly repaired severe storm damage from 1674 and added all these extensive outworks. We're talking complex geometric outer defenses, things like hornworks and ravelins. They were continually layering all this upon old 10th century foundations to create an absolute masterclass in military architecture.
Finally, Section 6, Sieges and Modern Spain, Endurance Tested. Now, when the Iberian Union ended in 1640, Ceuta outright rejected the new Portuguese king and remained fiercely loyal to Spain, but that loyalty bought them unimaginable warfare, which is represented by the number 33. Spanning from 1694 all the way to 1727 under Sultan Moulay Ismail of Morocco, this stands as the longest recorded siege in human history. Just take a second to really think about that. 33 years of constant bombardment, strict rationing, and just trying to survive right behind those royal walls.
Those defenses were pushed to their absolute breaking point time and time again. The 18th century alone saw 3 massive sieges successfully repelled. The walls held firm. But notice that sharp drop down to 0 in the 19th century. Basically, advancements in modern weaponry, specifically high-powered artillery, simply made ancient stone walls functionally obsolete. The era of the walled fortress was officially over. But Ceuta's identity as a steadfast Spanish stronghold, that remained fully intact.
I want to leave you with this final thought today. As a modern Spanish city, physically located on the continent of North Africa, how does Ceuta's 250,000-year history challenge our understanding of geography and national borders today? Because looking at Ceuta's incredible endurance, from Roman fish sauce factories to legendary betrayals to 33-year-long sieges, it really forces us to rethink everything we thought we knew about where Europe ends and Africa begins. Borders aren't always just cleanly drawn by continents. Sometimes they're carved out stone by stone, century by century. So keep questioning those lines on the map, and thank you so much for diving into this explainer with me.